Welcome to Ask the Expert, a daily series from 8:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. to help small businesses. Ask any questions in the comments or on hashtag QBATE on Twitter. If you need any more advice, join the official Inuit QuickBooks SMB community group on Facebook. Accountants and business experts are on hand 24/7. During the live session, we'll be running a poll, so please do engage with it, and I will share the results with you at the end. So hi everybody, good morning. My name is Tom Aikens. You'll know me as a chef, and I have been cooking and as a chef for, over 35 years now. So I started my career when I was 16 years old. I left school and went straight into a cooking school. Pre that, it's quite funny because I was born in Norfolk. The reason I went into sort of cooking was that my mother was a great home cook. My father was in the wine business. And so I guess with the two of them sort of spearheading that, that sort of drove me into cooking. My mother, she was very sort of instrumental, I guess, in me sort of making my first steps into the kitchen. So where we lived in Norfolk, we had a huge garden, and part of that was taken over by a vegetable garden that my mother tended to, and she would get us out there pretty much every day, sort of helping her weeding and growing and picking lots of different vegetables. So at an early age, I definitely knew what vegetables were in season. Not that we would get asparagus in January or strawberries in the wintertime, so I really knew about seasonal produce. And sort of after that, sort of, I guess, by the age of 8, she was then getting us sort of helping in the kitchen, sort of preparing things. And her larder was always stocked full of yummy, goody things. So sort of jams and chutneys and pickles. And yeah, so we both sort of love cooking. I have a twin brother as well who is also a chef. We're pretty much joined at the hip. And from then, so we traveled in France because my father was in the wine business. So we did a lot of trips around France with him in the wine regions. And then basically, we had a lot of time reminiscing sort of over French food a lot of the time. And by the age of 12, that's when I realized that I wanted to be a chef. And funny story again there. So I rang up my local college, asked them what qualifications do I need to become a chef. And this was then 1986. Not a lot of people were going into cooking at that age, that's for sure. And anyway, so I enrolled at the college, got there for 2 years, did my 706 City and Guilds 1 and 2, and then came to London. So I worked all over London with different restaurants, mainly Michelin-starred restaurants. So I worked with people like Pierre Kaufman, Richard Neat, David Cavalier, Philip Britton. I then also went and worked in France because I thought that working in France would definitely sort of give me sort of foot up in terms of my career. So I went and worked with a great chef called Gilles Robuchon, who a lot of you will know. Very famous chef. He had 3 stars in Paris, and I worked with him for just over a year. I have to say it was one of the hardest places that I worked in. The camaraderie and the team was amazing. Everyone was very supportive of each other, but I have to say the hours were quite excruciating. I was living sort of 45 minutes away, so I was getting up at 4:45 in the morning, getting into the kitchen at about 6:30, and then we wouldn't be finished in the evening until around 1 a.m. So pretty much throughout the week, I would get around sort of 3 hours sleep every night. But then we had weekends off, which was always a bonus. After that, I then went and worked with another French chef in Reims called Gerard Boyer, which was another 3-star. And then I returned to London when I was 25, 26, and I then got 2 stars at Pied à Terre. So I was the youngest chef ever to get 2 Michelin stars at the age of 26. I stayed there 5 years. I then went and worked with Carol Bamford, who has Dalesford, as you know, is an organic farming business. The reason I went to work there was because I wanted to know about produce, where the produce came from. As we all know, that was then 2000. So organic farming was just sort of starting, and the whole sort of provenance and sustainability was also just sort of starting through sort of, restaurants and suppliers. I would say I was definitely ahead of the curve because I think I wanted to really find out about where produce came from. So I worked with her for about 2 years. I also got to work in the abattoir a little bit as well. So it really sort of made me understand about farming and where produce came from. I then opened Tom Aikens restaurant, which is in Chelsea in 2003. I was there for around 11, 12 years, and that's where I got a Michelin star. I also got nominated as the 8th best restaurant in the world. And that was my first restaurant that I actually sort of co-owned with a bunch of shareholders. It was not, I would say, the easiest at times, because it was my first job as being a manager of people, so it was quite sort of stressful. As you all will probably remember, your first time of running your own business and being a manager of people, it's very different, sort of on the cold face, rather than sort of the learning and training that you do before. And basically after that, I then took sort of 3-4 years out, because I had my second daughter. The first one I didn't really see, so I had a little bit of time off. And then literally last 4 years before I opened Muse restaurant, I was traveling and opening up restaurants over the world. So I opened up a few in the Middle East, also in the Far East. And then I opened Muse this year in January. And basically January, as we know, this year, so I had opened Muse in January to March. We had 3 months, and then we had COVID, which obviously, as you've all been aware, has really been quite a very difficult position for a lot of restaurants and people in the hospitality industry. And Muse really was a restaurant that I would say that I had thought about for the last 4 years when I didn't have my own restaurant, and really try to figure out really what people want in a restaurant. And I really want to give people a true sort of experience and engagement and a new, unique sort of journey from when they came in. So I think, the whole outlook on restaurants for me was to try and really get people to have a memory when they left the restaurant. There was something that was very special, very unique, that they would always remember about Muse. And for me, as a lot of you who go out and eat in lots of restaurants, because we're very fortunate in London or all over the UK to have amazing restaurants, if you sort of ask yourself a week later, where did you eat? What did you have to eat? Was there something special about, the chinaware or the service? Was there a funny anecdote that someone told you? Something that will sort of remain in your brain to remember about that meal. And pretty much I can guarantee you a lot of the time that it's no. And so I was just thinking about this. How can we sort of instill a memory into a person when he comes into Muse, that he will remember something about the meal, the experience, the food, etc., etc. So we're getting some questions in here now, and I'm going to answer these in a minute. So basically, in terms of getting memories into people sort of throughout the whole journey that they come into the restaurant, there are various things that we sort of hit them with in terms of memory items that could be like, for instance, we have a pop-up menu. So there's a particular dish that comes into a storybook, and it opens up as a pop-up of a beech tree, which talks about moments of me of madness as a child, of climbing this amazing beech tree. And then we also have some other things along the way, that in terms of the journey of the food, where the chefs are introducing all the different courses, and it kind of carries on like that. So at the end, there are a lot of little anecdotes and stories that we relate to the customers as they eat their meal. So I'm going to start asking some questions here. So this is Zalaman from Facebook. My dream has always been to open my own restaurant. Do you have any advice for chefs who want to open their own restaurant in the future? Great question there, Zalaman. So thank you for that. So I had, at a very early age, as you know, wanted to be a chef. So that was quite easy for me. So it meant that I had a lot of experience early on in my career. But to actually set up your own restaurant is very difficult these times. Financially, it's a huge burden. So basically, I think in terms of as a career, you really want to choose your path of where you want to work. I chose predominantly to work in Michelin restaurants. There is a whole field of different restaurants that you can go and work in. obviously from casual to fine dining to fast food to working in hotels. So I would pigeonhole yourself to sort of work which sort of restaurant or field of expertise you want to work in. And then after that, you can then really decide on what type of restaurant that you want to have yourself. Okay, Carl from Instagram, what is your favorite knife? So I have a knife roll that is full of different labels and brands of knives, some English, some Japanese, some German. I would say predominantly the knives that I have are mainly sort of Japanese knives, and some German knives, so sort of Henkel and Wusthof. And then I have some English knives as well. Just make sure that you always have a good steel or stone to sharpen those knives of yours, because as you know, the knives are not cheap and they are very expensive. So you need to look after them and take good care of them, because they will last a lifetime. Okay, I've got one here from Liam from Twitter. He's asking, how did your financial backers support you during lockdown? So basically in lockdown, as we know, a lot of restaurants and hotels put their staff on furlough, which is exactly what we did. And to continue that side of the business, or we actually started a delivery service called Muse, which also then helped us to keep going with part of the business as well. Claire from Twitter. Hi Tom, I have all your cookbooks and have tried most of your dazzling recipes from cooking. Do you have any plans on releasing a new cookbook in the near future? So for the minute, Claire, a lot of publishers, they're not doing all that many more books. I think it's quite a difficult time for publishers, but I haven't done any cookbooks for a number of years. I've done 3 cookbooks, as you said. Tom Aikens was the first one, which is more sort of restaurant style cooking book, which is the one that you have. I then had a cookbook called Easy, which is everyday cooking dishes from breakfast, lunch, dinner, and brunch dishes. And then I also did a fish book. So yes, so I'd definitely like to do another book, probably a fine dining cookbook is the next cookbook that I would like to do. Robert from Facebook, where do you get your inspiration from for the menu, and how long does it take to develop a menu for a new restaurant? Very good question, Robert. So new dishes that come on, we as chefs are all inspired by the seasons. So basically when a new season comes along, we have 4 seasons, as you know, in the UK: spring, summer, autumn, winter. So we kind of work a season, behind that. So for now, we have just had summer, we're coming into autumn, so we're now working on dishes for the autumn. So basically I look at all the different foods, proteins, vegetables, fruits that are in season for October. I then sort of pick up the proteins, so the fish and the meat that I want to put on, and then I start then sort of putting on the vegetables and the fruits that I think will match those, and then we start visualizing what that dish will look like. Then we start creating it and cooking it, tasting it. And so a dish to get on a menu can take anywhere from 1 month up to even 3 months to get it right. Lee from Twitter, to win a Michelin star at a young age must have come with a lot of pressure. How have you coped with that? Great question, Lily. So in terms of, yes, being the youngest chef at 26 to have 2 stars, yes, it is very difficult. It is a lot of pressure. And at that early age of 26, I would say that I wasn't the best at coping with that amount of pressure. It was very difficult. I'd say it was very, it was very difficult. It was very stressful. That was then 95. So the world was a very different place. And so I think in terms of coping with that, I used to do other things outside of my work, for instance, so it just wasn't always work. I got into fitness, got into exercise and things like that. So counterbalance, I'd say, the sort of stress of being a head chef in that kitchen. Robert from Facebook. Sorry, I had that one. Sorry, Adam from Facebook Messenger. I'm a huge fan of eating out. I've been to your restaurant twice. Loved it. Thank you, Adam. For me, the food service ambience are almost equally important. What's your thought on that? Absolutely. I think the ambience, the food, the service, they all go hand in hand. People definitely are there for the food predominantly, that's for sure. So I think in terms of trying to give an overall, great experience, the food that we sort of serve in Muse is delivered by the chefs. So the chefs, obviously, they create food with me. We cook the foods they, I would say, are sort of the best at communicating how it's, how it's prepared, how it's cooked, and kind of anecdotes and stories with that. But then, obviously, with the front of house team, they're the ones that are clearing up and also guiding the guest in terms of some of the food that's delivered as well. Elena from Instagram, would you ever go back working for someone else? Elena, listen, I think it's probably very difficult once you have actually worked for yourself and you've had your own business to go back to work for other people. Can be quite difficult. But saying that, I do quite a lot of sort of consultancy things with different hotels, and so the answer to your question is that I do work for other people, and that we have some consultancy agreements with hotels in other parts of the world. So I do work with other people. I work with their teams, and in a way, it's great because I'm also coaching them, and in terms of giving people, I guess, a sort of once in a lifetime experience of working with someone like myself. Okay, next question. Kenza, what is your favorite restaurant in the UK? I always get asked this question, what is my favorite restaurant in the UK? It's very, very difficult, Kenza, because as we all know, there are many restaurants opening up all the time. We're very fortunate in the UK to be having so many amazing restaurants, and we all want to eat at them when they open. And so I would say that I don't really have a favorite restaurant per se, but I do like to eat out quite a lot. So I go to, or try to go to, some of the new ones when they open. But some of the old ones, I like the Clove Club in London. There's a fine dining restaurant in Shoreditch. Also, Claude Bosey at the Bibendum. Tom Sellers, who has his restaurant Story. So yeah, those types of restaurants I really love. Lawrence from Facebook Messenger, from running your own business for nearly 20 years, what would you say is the best and hardest thing about being an entrepreneur? I think the best thing is you are in charge of your own destiny, exactly on where you're going and what you want to do, what you want to accomplish. I always say to my chefs, whoever come and work with me, if they want to have their own business, is to really have a focus and goal, and think about exactly where you want to go in your career and how you want to achieve that, where you want to go. So I really sort of help them sort of define where they want to go in their future, sort of their goals, their aspirations, and what type of restaurant they want to have at the end, because then that really helps them in their sort of, I guess, their stages of growth in their career. So basically between the age of 20 and 30 is really when you are learning all the time about, about cooking. And that also, when you're in different restaurants, it means you're working with different sort of managing people. So with the head chef and the manager of the restaurant, you can see that side of it as well. So it's not just about working in the kitchen. So you see sort of hopefully see this direction of the restaurant, also from a financial point of view as well. So another question here. Johnny from Instagram, do you have to train to be as good as you, do you have to train to be as good as you, or can you learn in the job? You're always learning. Even now, Johnny, I'm learning all the time, is when I do a new concept. So for instance, I'm going to be doing a restaurant in Tokyo at some point soon in the near future. So again, that's a whole new experience for me in terms of that level of cooking. I've opened restaurants in the Middle East as well. And again, it's a very different approach from our cooking in terms of the ingredients, in terms of the methods of cooking that they use. So again, it's really sort of, jumping 2 feet in first into their culture, into their food, and really learning about that as well. So that's getting on the ground, going to different restaurants and seeing how that all works as well. Okay, another question here. Theodore from Facebook Messenger. Hi, Tom. My family has been running a small restaurant for nearly 20 years. What's your advice on how to keep up with trends, changing behaviors of how people are dining and food styles without losing the core value as a restaurant, and what makes us special? That is a very big question there, Theodore, but it's a good question. So I think, listen, as we know, restaurants, they change and develop all the time. And eventually, when you do open a restaurant, sadly, you do become yesterday's news. So I think in terms of trying to keep up with trends, you have to follow what is new, what is hot, and try and bring that into your menu. So for instance, when trends come out, and I, as a chef, I always get asked, what are the new trends? What are the new flavors? What are the new cooking techniques? And literally every year. And it's sometimes as a chef, it's also very difficult to try and get the right answers to these, because in terms of a chef, I'm always looking at the cooking approach to things. As we have seen, flavors and tastes, they change. New ingredients come in, different experiences of foods, they chop and change. Fermentation and pickling, are always hot topics. Healthy eating, as we have all seen, and less eating of meat has become and is becoming increasingly more and more popular. So I think it's always I do a lot of research, on the web, on the net, looking at sort of food groups that are sort of asking all these questions as well. All over the globe, as we know, we have social media is also a great way to communicate or to do research on other restaurants and seeing what other chefs are doing, and other restaurants. Back when I was training, we definitely didn't have social media or just about a mobile phone. But now a lot of my chefs, they're on social media, so they're in communication with chefs all over the world. So it's very interesting for them to see what is happening in those types of restaurants. So I think it's a collection of of doing a lot of research, into other restaurants, not just in the UK, but all over the globe. Those ones in particular, sort of in the US and Asia and places like that. Gabriella from Instagram, how do you see the restaurant business develop in the future? Gabriella, as you know, the last 3 months for everyone has been pretty horrendous, and you can never, I guess, hold a crystal ball up and see what is in the future. It's very difficult, but I think in terms of the core values of what you do in a restaurant, the main focus and priority is giving very, very good food, giving great service and value for what you are delivering. Those three things, if you get those right, service, food, and value, are going to make your business grow from strength to strength. Those three things are the most important thing that you can do. Ursula from Instagram, what do you define as success? Ursula, that's a very good question as well. I think in terms of success, that's measured and defined for every person on very different levels. Sometimes success for me is making my children happy when I've given them a nice fairy cake, for instance. I have to say that sometimes even my daughters say that my food is disgusting. It has happened, but generally success for me is just making guests leave the restaurant happy, that they're happy and fulfilled, and they've had an amazing experience and journey when they have come to Muse. Sabina from Twitter, what challenges do you have to overcome with Muse, and that you opened the restaurant not long before the pandemic? So basically, that's a good question as well. So the challenges that we faced was when we literally, as you said, we opened in January, we closed in March. So we had at that stage just literally had all the good reviews, which was great. So we had around 4 amazing reviews, which was great. So after that, the pandemic came, and then we actually started up a delivery service called Musette. But I think we are opening back up in September 3rd, so we will see you then. Okay, so we've got the poll results here, which I asked. Have you been working longer hours during the pandemic? So here we go. 20% clicked on yes and said that I had to pivot my business. 0% clicked on I had to implement safety measures. 60% clicked on yes, other reason. 20% clicked on no. So there we go. So if you have any further questions, please get in touch with QuickBooks support team on Facebook, or if it's for me, then either follow me online on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Coming up on Ask the Expert on tomorrow is Aaron Patrick, who is head of accountants at Bofix, a UK Intuit QuickBooks certified trainer and also a director of Apple Core Group, a small family empire which ensures that he practices what he preaches to all his lovely clients. A reminder that if you need any more advice, join the official Inuit QuickBooks SMB community group on Facebook. Accountants and business experts are on hand 24/7. So thank you all very much for joining Ask the Expert. It's been lovely for me to talk to you and to share my experiences with you. And I look forward to seeing you at Muse. And thank you all very much. It's been great answering all questions. Have a good day, and we will see you soon. Thank you.